Quilting Celebrations with Patrick Lose is brought to you by The Warm Company, manufacturers of the most loved battings and double-stick fusibles for creative people. Janome, what's next? Superior Threads, all your favorite threads. Havel's Sewing, cut it close with Havel's Sewing. And Patrick Lose Studios, designs and inspirations for your quilting celebrations.
Welcome back. I hope those tips help you with your binding. I think we answered most of your questions that have been asked of me when I'm teaching binding. And speaking of questions, we decided we wanted to do a little bit of a question and answer segment on the show. And so we posted a comment on Facebook asking people to send in their questions and the kind of things that they would like us to answer or talk about on the show. So I want to get right to these.
Okay, great.
One of them, the very first question, was something that I knew I wanted to answer. Tammy Oaks says, my friend quilted her quilt with Warm and Natural batting, and when she washed and dried it, it all shrunk up. Should they be dry cleaned? You know, there's a reason that cotton shrinks. We want that shrinkage. If it shrunk all up, like Tammy is saying, I think there was a different problem than the batting, because I've quilted hundreds of pieces with Warm and Natural. I know you use Warm and Natural too. Yeah. And it's not the batting. The batting is going to shrink.
A little bit. It's cotton, right. Yeah. So it's going to come up a little bit. High quality fabric is still going to come up a little bit. A little bit, but not as much as some of the lower quality fabrics.
I have a feeling that that's the case, that maybe there was a lower quality fabric or an inexpensive fabric used. Warm and Natural also has a polyester scrim within the batting, and the cotton is needle punched into that. And that polyester scrim is what helps keep the shape of Warm and Natural, and it keeps it from shrinking too much. I know when I'm done with a quilt, the first thing that I do is throw it in the washer. I want to see that little bit of shrinkage.
I do too.
It adds texture. This piece here has not been washed yet, so it hasn't shrunk, but we have washed table toppers like this, and they don't shrink that much. But what happens is all this meandering, you get that little bit of shrinkage, and all of a sudden there's just a great texture.
Yeah, wonderful dimension, which then also makes your appliques
pop
lift up a little more.
Exactly.
And for me, that's part of a quilt, is the warm, cuddly.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Getting it nice and textured, softened, and well loved.
There's a question here that you had.
I wanted to find out about this one. This was a great question. It was about applique, and you doing quite a bit of applique.
Yeah, I do. Patty Linder asked this question, and we know Patty. She's been on our retreats and things like that, good customer of ours too. And she asks, you seem to prefer applique projects to pieced ones, as do I. Why? And it's not necessarily a preference, it's just what comes naturally to me. I feel like I'm an illustrator, and applique is the way that I can turn the things in my head into quilted pieces.
And that makes sense.
Yeah.
Saying that you're an illustrator, that makes complete sense. It would be pretty tricky to piece the shapes and the things that you draw. Yeah, it can be done, but it's not that really isn't my interest. I want, the line work that I have in my drawings and things to translate into the applique and the quilting. And, there's a lot of ways to do applique too, and I choose most of the time to use satin stitching to finish my appliques. And the reason for that is the illustrations look like a coloring book that way, the appliques, and you put a line around them, and that just gives you something to color within, and that's your fabric. So to me, applique is illustration on fabric, and that's why I do so much of it. Yeah, it works very well with your designs.
Exactly. And there's one more question I wanted to make sure that we got to from Phyllis. Whether or not to wash fabrics before or after quilting.
Oh, that's a great question.
Yeah, and if you wash, do you use color catches, and where do you buy these? She goes on to say, if you wash pre-cuts like a jelly roll, you have a mess. Don't wash pre-cuts.
No,
I mean, I would never. Personally, I do not wash fabric. I don't pre-wash anything.
Yeah, that would be fabric spaghetti.
Yeah.
I think.
Well, it'd be tied up in knots.
Yeah.
Jelly rolls especially. I don't pre-wash because I want that little bit of shrinkage in a good quality fabric. There's going to be, a small amount of shrinkage that happens, and I want that to happen after I've quilted the piece.
Because that's when the personality comes in.
Exactly. And on top of that, nowadays, good quality fabrics do not bleed like they used to.
No.
You might get a little bit, and you can use the color catchers, and honestly, you can buy those in grocery stores, but go to your favorite quilt shop and talk to your quilt shop owner about that, and that's the kind of things that they should be teaching you.
The things I would use color catchers for might be a really, really intense intensely dyed piece, like
batiks,
a batik that has, you know, really intense red or deep black or
Reds
deep blue. I might pre-wash that just to make sure. But
I probably still wouldn't, personally.
Yeah.
You know, I'd throw a color catcher in or whatever. I only pre-wash in the case of garment sewing. So I do want to read, RJR Fabrics is the company that I design fabrics for, and they put this in every bolt of their fabric so that, you know, the consumer does know, and it says, this is fabric washing instructions. The dyes used in these fabrics are reactive dyes, therefore colors are stable and will not release any excess dye. That's really true. Pre-washing fabric is not necessary. If you choose to pre-wash, wash in cold water and damp dry. Complete the drying process by air drying. This washing and drying method will retain the finish of the fabric and will meet the standards of quilters who do not want to pre-wash fabrics and those who do.
Thank you. That hits
exactly.
both sides.
I think that's perfectly said when you're using quality fabrics. So I hope that answers your questions, and thank you for joining us for another episode of Quilting Celebrations with Patrick Lose. Thanks a lot, Kay, for being with us again.
Always a pleasure.
Same here, and we'll see you next time.
Quilting Celebrations with Patrick Lose is brought to you by The Warm Company, manufacturers of the most loved battings and double-stick fusibles for creative people. Janome, what's next? Superior Threads, all your favorite threads. Havel's Sewing, cut it close with Havel's Sewing. And Patrick Lose Studios, designs and inspirations for your quilting celebrations.